The Pats want the best for Drake Maye, but the franchise could be on its way to making him less impactful. That's where we start on this episode of Locked On Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Patriots fans? I'm your host, Nick Cattles, born and raised in New England, also host of the Everything Pats podcast, co-host of the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles, and a sports talk show host veteran. On today's episode, a top insider says an elite talent is likely on his way out, and we investigate if the Pats would make sense. Also, a once camp surprise sounds like a lock to make the 53-man roster. But first, the Pats could be making Drake Maye too timid for his talent. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. The Locked On Patriots podcast is a proud partner of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Patriots 100% unequivocally need Drake Maye to appreciate taking care of the football and taking care of himself. But there is a danger. There's a danger of preaching to Drake Maye so much to be safe, so much to be borderline conservative, that you could be neutering your franchise quarterback. You could be limiting his ultimate impact on the field. I bring this up because Dan Orlovsky this week posted a video of Maye versus the Vikings from Saturday. And Orlovsky posted just preseason, but hope Maye is more aggressive in season. Now, there's the video cut up of Maye not willing to make a couple of throws that were there. Greg Bedard at Boston Sports Journal wrote about Maye versus Minnesota. Overall, Maye was tentative throwing the ball. He barely connected with Mac Hollins on another high pass, a play in which he had two receivers, Pop Douglas and Kyle Williams, basically wide open for touchdowns. He took an unnecessary hit on another play where Williams was open on a pass Maye should have cut loose. This coaching staff has been getting the message to Maye from the very beginning of them being in New England. The message is be risk averse, Drake. Don't put the football in harm's way. Don't put yourself in harm's way. When in doubt, chuck it out. Don't mess around. And if you continue to preach to the quarterback to be risk averse, that might take precedent above everything else for the quarterback. And in most cases, that's okay. That's a good thing. But not when the quarterback is starting to think too much. Not when the quarterback is concerned, maybe even afraid of taking chances downfield in a game. During practice is one thing. But in an actual game, if the quarterback is afraid to take some of those throws that present themselves downfield because he's concerned it might lead to an interception, and he's going to have to hear it from the coaching staff, then that could be a problem. You've got Josh McDaniels in your ear, talking to you as much as he can for as long as he can during game days. And it just has to be another reminder to Drake, don't take an unnecessary risk. But you have to figure out what is unnecessary and necessary, because when you are somebody like Drake Maye, whose natural tendencies is to be a gunslinger, that's what he was at North Carolina. That's his natural form, is a gunslinger. When you have that gunslinging mentality, it's got to be difficult to not necessarily be a game manager. I don't think that's what Vrabel and McDaniels want, but it's got to be difficult to make sure you're picking your spots at the right time and the right way, because Maye likes to let it rip. Or at least he did. And now you see him against Minnesota on Saturday, and he has two throws that he could easily make and should make, but passes them up. And if you're the coaching staff, you've got to ask yourself the question, are we taking too much of the gunslinger away from Drake? And that has to be an internal struggle for Drake Maye. The inner turmoil to be that gunslinger that he naturally is, versus being the guy who was always minding his P's and Q's, taking great responsibility and accountability on the field to not put himself or his team at risk. It's got to be this constant battle right now for him. And this goes beyond Maye in the pocket. Let's think about when Maye extends plays. We've seen some of the best. We've seen some of the worst. Against Washington in the first preseason game, Maye is trying to extend that play. And of course, it opens the door for a bad decision and a fumble and turnover. But then you have Maye extending plays and making plays. You have him scrambling for touchdowns. You've got him making the play to Mac Hollins against Minnesota. And that was one of those plays that he actually had somebody downfield he should have thrown to from the pocket. But he extends the play. He rolls out. He finds Hollins, and it's a chunk play. So you get some of the best of Maye when he's extending plays. But then you have the risk of extending plays and trying to do too much. Maye has to ask himself, when should I escape? When is the right time to run? I have to remain a passer. The coaching staff telling me to remain a passer. But what happens if I remain a passer? I'm extending a play and I throw off one leg and I make a mistake. But then you have the highlight play during practice going back a week or two ago where Drake Maye is rolling out to his right, throws off one leg, chucks it 45, 50 yards downfield to, I believe it was Pop Douglas, perfectly thrown football for a touchdown. So you see that play, but you also understand that that play at a separate time could quickly become an interception in a momentum-changing type play for the defense. The big plays versus holding on to the football. The big plays versus throwing an interception every once in a while. These are the decisions that Maye has to make on the fly in real time. And it's got to be tough because if you naturally want to uncork it and then you have somebody else saying to you, don't uncork it every time, and then you start thinking, I can't just let it rip every single time. Now you start thinking and you could overthink. And that could become an issue. Taylor Kyles posted, Vrabel says he likes where Drake Maye is at, but they've discussed not taking senseless hits outside of the pocket. And that's another part of this. Extending plays, getting outside the pocket, you could take unnecessary hits. And I agree with Vrabel. Everybody should agree with Coach Vrabel. You don't want Maye taking unnecessary hits. You never want to see your quarterback taking unnecessary hits. You don't want the senseless, violence getting to your quarterback. But the challenge is defining and finding that line. What is senseless? What is not senseless? It's not every time when you're running or extending plays that there's going to be a situation where you took a senseless hit. If you knew that ahead of time, then you wouldn't do it. So you have to recognize that. And you also have to understand, if you're Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels, that you could take away some big plays from this offense by limiting Maye's ability to extend because of being too concerned about certain stuff. You have to understand that. And you're also towing the line when you want to use his legs, because we all know, we've talked about it, you want Maye to be a runner at times. You don't want to run him 15 times a game, but you do want to utilize his athleticism. And we've heard McDaniels has been using some of that stuff at practice. You've got some option play happening. So when do you do that? Because if you're calling plays to utilize Maye's legs, you're opening the opportunity for him to run with the football. And if he has one big play off of a run, well, the next time it's a pass play, but the pass rush is getting to him. His most recent memory is, well, I picked up 20 earlier in the game with my legs, so I'm just going to run with the football. So there's a balance here. And there's also a balance here with the offensive line, because the offensive line could create desperation. At Tuesday's practice, Maye was sacked, according to Andrew Callahan, 6 times. Phil Perry had it at 7 sacks. And Perry wrote, on Maye's first 18 dropbacks of 11 on 11, that's when those 7 sacks happened. 18 dropbacks, 7 sacks. Pressure equals mistakes. Maye will have the urgency to do something to help the team win. That kind of urgency can backfire because, again, it presents a level of desperation. And so ultimately the question is, will Maye be capable of balancing all of this? If he can, the sky is the limit. But can he balance the gunslinger tendencies, the athleticism with taking care of the football and taking care of himself? And will this coaching staff go a little bit too far and actually neuter their quarterback's ability to make some big plays? We'll see how it goes in 2025. There could be a divorce on the way between a top talent and his franchise. Should the Pats butt in? Our answer next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. Whether you're playing Yahoo Fantasy for the first time or you're a veteran making your millionth league, you should know that Yahoo Fantasy, they've been doing this for a while, and they've been incredibly successful. Yahoo Fantasy celebrating 28 years of fantasy football greatness, dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they dropped the Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. But if you're more into the classics, they take care of you as well. You can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Adam Schefter going out there on ESPN making some noise. Schefter said that the Cowboys and Micah Parsons, to him, are headed towards a divorce. He does not think a long-term contract extension is going to happen between player and franchise. And I'll tell you right now, this is the deal that you make 100 times out of 100. If you're the Pats, you're absolutely interested in making this deal. If you find out that Parsons is available, you have to take advantage. You have to get involved. You cannot pass up a deal for that type of talent. Short-term, long-term, both. Parsons is an answer for you. And that's why you have to absolutely go after this if it is there to be chased. Parsons just turned 26 years old in May. We're talking about a young guy. I mean, you could argue he is just beginning to hit his prime as a pass rusher. I mean, we might not have seen the best of Parsons. It's tough to argue that we've seen the best. Frankly, only 26. And you know that if you trade for Parsons, you're going to get an extension done because that's the issue with Dallas. Dallas is not, upset with Parsons because he doesn't produce. They're not upset with him because of any trouble he got into off the field. This is strictly about money. And this is Parsons believing that the Cowboys have not taken care of him in due time. And so he wants out. And if this is truly headed towards a divorce, Schefter's the best in the business. If this is truly heading towards a divorce, then you should feel relatively confident that you're going to get a contract done with Parsons, because I would just have to imagine before you make any kind of trade with the Cowboys, you would have a conversation with Parsons' representatives. You would have a discussion to make sure things are set, to make sure that you're going to get the guy signed long-term. You're not making this deal unless a contract is done, agreed upon. You can shake on it. You can email each other. You can send a text. You could use the WhatsApp, however you want to do it. You've got to make sure. So we're not just talking about a short-term boost. We're talking about somebody who is 26 years old, who would sign a contract extension long-term. You'd have him for at least the next 3, 4, maybe even longer, next 3 or 4 years, 5 years. And because Parsons is 26, he fits the timeline of your best defensive players. I mean, you think about Christian Gonzalez. You think about Christian Barmore, Milton Williams. All those guys are, 23 to about 26, 27 years old. And then you plug Parsons right into the middle of that. I mean, imagine going out there with that defense, all those guys in their early to mid-20s. Gonzalez at corner. Barmore, Williams on the inside creating pressure. And then Parsons wreaking havoc on the outside. I mean, so many different possibilities with those four guys. Those four guys can simply just stop an offense. They could stop most offenses. And he fits that timeline. I mean, long term, if you're looking at edge, you've got questions. You've got questions right now. Calebon Chason, first two practices of the week before you go into the Giants game, has leapfrogged Keion White. During Tuesday's practice, White was strictly with the twos. So it looks like, reportedly, White has been demoted. He has been pushed back to the second defensive unit. Chason has been a beast. He's had a great camp, and he has taken that spot from White. And as we get ready for the Giants preseason finale, who knows who's going to play? Probably not a lot of the starters. But if you're looking at it, right now, it's Harold Landry and Calebon Chason on the outside. Those are your top two edge players. Chason's on a one-year deal. Landry's 29 years old. If you were banking on White, I don't think you're as confident now with him being demoted to the second defense. So maybe they thought White was off to a great start. They thought that this was going to be the beginning of something, but it seems like he has fizzled out. Now, of course, he can make another push. Maybe you get into the regular season and Keion White gets going, and all of a sudden he's absolutely bananas, and you say, man, that was a couple of weeks of a rough patch during camp. That's possible. But right now, can you guarantee it? Right now, can you guarantee that Keion White is the answer at edge for the next 5 years? Not with being surpassed by Chason, as good as Chason's been in this camp. So you got Chason, one-year deal, Landry, 29. Keion White demoted to the second unit. Anthony Jennings looks like he's probably done, whether it's a trade or he gets cut. And if he makes the team, he's going to be at the very bottom of the depth chart. Elijah Ponder, we'll talk about him in a little bit. A very interesting prospect for this team. Truman Jones, interesting, but not as interesting as maybe Ponder. And then you got Braden Swinson. We don't know what Braden Swinson's going to be. So, I mean, if you could bring in somebody like Micah Parsons and solve at least one edge rusher long-term, solve one of those big questions that you've got in the long term, then you do it. Because you know what Parsons is. Dude's a beast. A versatile playmaking beast. And because you're also looking at the offensive line and the wide receiver positions, you're not really sure about a couple of the positions up front that we've discussed. You're not really sure what you're going to get out of this wide receiver core, especially with, the injuries that are popping up over the past couple of weeks. You're going to lean on your defense. And so you could lean on your defense in the short term with Parsons. You can also go into the future with those four guys I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, knowing that your defense with that type of talent should be very good for multiple years, which affords you some time to, if you don't have the answers in the wide receiver room, if you don't have the answers on the offensive line for all five, it gives you some time that you lean on your defense and you start to upgrade at those other spots offensively. So eventually within the next year, 18 months, you feel like you are a playoff team. Now it's going to cost you a lot. We're talking premier cost. And Frank Schwab recently wrote about the Khalil Mack trade because that's probably what you're looking at. Mack was 27 Defensive Player of the Year in 2016. Parsons has not been a Defensive Player of the Year. Mack was a two-time first-team All-Pro before that trade to Chicago. Parsons has been a two-time first-team All-Pro. And, of course, when Chicago acquired Khalil Mack, he was signed to an extension. That was the richest ever for a defensive player. Chicago sent 2 firsts, a third, and a sixth. The Raiders actually sent Mack a second and a conditional 5th. So, in essence, if you're making that deal for Parsons, Parsons is your first-round pick in 2026, while you give up a first, a third, and a sixth, but you get back a second and a conditional 5th-round pick. And I think you got some wiggle room for the Patriots because The Patriots have not one but 2 fourth-round picks in 2026, and they have 2 sixth-round picks in 2026. So if you want to recoup that third-round pick, you could probably make a trade over draft weekend and slide up to the third round, given the ammo that you have in the back pocket right now. So, I would absolutely make a deal like that if I were the Patriots and Micah Parsons is actually, in reality, going to be available. He lifts your ceiling and your floor. And it's a statement to the league. You're letting everybody know in the NFL that you're not messing around. You're trying to win. You're not afraid of giving up assets. You're not afraid of paying the money. That is a statement. And you could also use Parsons to help you recruit other players. Are players going to turn down the opportunity to play in New England if the Patriots go out there and acquire Micah Parsons? I think it would be less likely that those players would say that. A camp surprise now seems like a roster lock, and we're not talking about Efton Chisholm. Find out who we're talking about next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day. You suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without all the stress. Want to have fun, right? Get rid of the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merchandise, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes that all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to the first pitch. They've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. I mean, think about it. Seat views right in the app before you buy, so you know exactly where you will be. Sitting right across the street if you want. Easy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. It is getting tougher and tougher to envision this 53-man roster without Elijah Ponder on said roster. And the more you read about Elijah Ponder, the more you hear about him, the more it feels like the Patriots might have found another UDFA gem. We think about Efton Chisholm and what he's done as an undrafted free agent. On the defensive side, Ponder is opening a lot of eyes. Now, who is Elijah Ponder? He's got tools. His relative athletic score was a 9.70 coming out for the draft. That was the 62nd highest RAS out of 2012 defensive ends going back to 1987. So he is incredibly athletic. You think about edge rushers, you think about some of the best athletes on the field. So for Ponder to be the 62nd best, highest RAS at that position since 1987 tells you how truly athletic this young man is. And Dane Brugler of The Athletic actually had Ponder with a 6th to 7th round grade. So he did not think Ponder was going to be a UDFA. Here's what Brugler wrote on Ponder in The Beast. Of course, Ponder's from Cal Poly. A 2-star recruit. He bypassed a few FBS offers, Colorado State, San Jose State, to sign with FCS Cal Poly. Ponder played a hybrid edge role throughout college, both standing up and putting his hand in the dirt, and ranks 3rd in school history with 26.5 career sacks. You think about, standing up, putting your hand in the dirt, you're talking versatility, and we know that Vrabel and Terrell Williams love versatility on their defensive line. Back to Brugler. Quick off the ball. Ponder can threaten the corner or work across the faces of blockers inside. Overall, Ponder doesn't always play up to his testing numbers, but he rushes with an initial and late burst to affect the quarterback. When I read or hear about a guy coming out into the draft and someone like Brugler says, he doesn't always play up to his athleticism. He always doesn't play up to, the standards of those numbers and what they would tell you what he should be. First, I think, well, the guy is just a raw athlete, right? He's He's a piece of clay that has yet to be molded. And then I got some other questions. Is it a motor problem? I mean, you could be a great athlete, but if you don't have a motor that keeps on ticking through a football game, that's going to be a problem. So is it the motor? Then I think about a player like Ponder who has that freak athleticism, who turned down, as Brugler wrote, he turned down a few FBS offers and ended up playing in the FCS. Is a player like that getting bored? Now, that's not an excuse. But sometimes when you're a freak athlete and you are so much better than the person across from you and you're younger, you could tend to get a little bit bored. So was there a lack of a motor? Was he bored? Or was it coaching? Did the coaching at the FCS level not get as much out of Ponder as they should have? Because I'll tell you, Mike Smith, outside linebackers coach, pass rush specialist for the Patriots, he spoke to the media on Tuesday, and Mike Smith loves himself some Ponder. Mark Daniels posted this. Smith calls Ponder one of the best undrafted players he's been around. Mike Smith said he got goosebumps talking about Ponder. The man said he got goosebumps. Mike Smith played in the NFL. He's been around a lot of great players. He's been around a lot of very, very good pass rushers. And he's saying he gets goosebumps talking about this young man. Taylor Kyles posted, Smith says the UDFA has a veteran presence to him and has an extremely bright future. Yeah, when your positional coach is talking like that about you, you should feel really good about making the 53-man roster coming out of camp as a UDFA. I mean, Mike Smith is throwing bouquets at Ponder's feet. Loves him. And, we talked about last segment, the issue with the edge position. Do you really have a long-term answer there? Do you feel like your young guys are going to be able to do what you need them to do for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years? And Ponder's a part of this because defensive end, edge, outside linebacker, it is a premier position. Being an edge is a premier position. And if you think that Ponder can make plays, then you're keeping him on the roster. When your pass rush specialist is walking around saying he gets goosebumps thinking and talking about Ponder, how do you waive Elijah Ponder and hope that he gets to the practice squad? I mean, is there any doubt? If you have any doubt, think about special teams. Yeah, I said it. Andrew Callahan posted, the Patriots' core special teamers are emerging. Brendan Schooler and Jack Gibbons played on all 4 units against Minnesota, while Christian Ellis, Jalen Hawkins, Craig Woodson, and rookie Ponder appeared on 3. So every other guy that's playing as much special teams as Ponder is playing is making this roster, hands down. Gibbons is making the roster. Ellis is making the roster. Schooler is making the roster. Hawkins is making the roster. Woodson just got picked. He's making the roster. So Ponder's out there with guys who are going to be on this roster, which should tell us, when you talk about players trying to crack the 53, players that were UDFAs, one of the best ways you could do that, find yourself on the roster, is playing consistently on special teams. And that's precisely how Jeremy Springer has been using Ponder, and Ponder has had a number of really nice plays and blocks on special teams through the first 2 preseason games. So it's difficult to envision Elijah Ponder not making this roster. Excited to see him. But we'll see if he makes the roster, but he's out there. I'm excited to see him with his athleticism, with this defensive staff. Their penchant for, letting it go and letting guys rush. Interesting. That wraps up this edition of Locked On Patriots. Reach out to me on Twitter at NickCRadio. Don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel. And don't forget to hit that like button. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Let's continue to push those subscribers. Let's challenge these other NFL teams on Locked On the Patriots. Come on, we could do better. Thank you for making Locked On Patriots your first listen and for being an everydayer. For your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Football with hosts Vinny Iyer and Kate Madjuk. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.